to South Carolina on a steamer, and she saw the mansion falling apart. And so basically they tried to get the federal government to step up and save the home of our first president. The federal government said no. They went to the Commonwealth of Virginia and said, will you help save Washington's home? And they said no. So basically, Louisa Cunningham, the mother of our founder, said, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically she said, if the men of America will not step up and save the home of George Washington, why can't the women of America do it? So that was the impetus for Anne Pamela Cunningham to create the Mount Vernon Ladies Association in 1853. And so they launched a national campaign to raise $200,000 to purchase the estate from John Augustine Washington III. And what's really amazing about that story is there were citizens from every state who made donations to support the efforts of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. And there were men who clearly made gifts. There were men who did speaking programs to help the ladies. But the ladies were just pioneers at that era because, women didn't have the right to vote. So they were just trailblazers. So in 1858, John Augustine Washington III signed a contract of sale for $200,000 with the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. They made the full purchase price of $200,000 in 1859, and then on February 22nd of 1860, they opened Mount Vernon to the nation and the world. So that story is part of our ethos. The government didn't come in and save Mount Vernon. We have never accepted any government funding. So part of our campaign messaging is, it's the patriots across the country, the citizens who make gifts and buy memberships and buy tickets. They allow us to operate and to share this treasure with the nation and the world. And so, Sue, for your second question, how can smaller organizations replicate what we've done to an extent? I would say that the landscapes tell the story of America. So George Washington's landscape and his gardens tell the story of Washington and America. And by preserving his estate and his gardens and landscape, we are able to educate the world and inspire the world about his life and legacy. And so if you are working for a conservancy, helping your community to understand that the landscapes in your community tell the story of your community and America. So I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and Frederick Law Olmsted helped design Jackson Park. So Jackson Park, that landscape is part of the history of Chicago and America. You can say the same thing about Central Park. So getting your community to understand that landscapes tell the story of the country, that's one way that you can replicate what Mount Vernon has done. And I would also say that communities with great landscapes and great gardens are often healthier and they have a higher quality of life. So getting your community and stakeholders to understand that will help you advance your cause.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. And the other thing that kind of sparked in my mind when you were talking about the formation of the Ladies Association was that, giving circles for women are a big thing, and kind of I think over the last 10 years, there's a recognition amongst development professionals that women can have their own wealth, and that, just assuming that their husband is the keeper, the wallet holder or whatever it is not true. So,
Correct.
All right, Eileen, you've guided institutions through complex capital campaigns. So to tell us a little bit about that, but also kind of, so the positives of that, but then also missteps that you kind of see over and over.
Hi everybody, love the question, missteps, and I probably have made every single one you could want to make in a campaign because I've been around forever, I'm very old. I love what you do, and I want to thank you for everything that you do for people, for families, for kids. It's remarkable. I'm a big beneficiary also of parks and growing up around them. So I have run a ton of campaigns, and what will be engraved, or maybe it'll be on a sticky label when I am cremated, inside the little niche, it'll say these words: "You can't get what you don't ask for." And so that's a very important mantra to have for all of you, even if you're not frontline fundraisers. It's very important that you have that in your mind. And the second thing is, don't make decisions for donors. Even though we're in a tricky, icky time of with the government issues, it's still a wonderful time to be asking for money. People are still sitting on a lot of cash from the COVID days. IRAs are fatter than ever. Stock portfolios bigger than ever. And so don't decide that it's not a good time to ask somebody for money. Let them tell you it's not a good time to ask for money. The other thing that we all learned 5 years ago during COVID was how many people got very paralyzed by asking for money, that were in the midst of significant campaigns for significant causes. And so I think I was directing maybe 6 campaigns at the time. And 2 of the 6, really, I just couldn't get the paralysis to move away. And those 2 did not meet their goals, while the other 4 kept asking, kept receiving, and met or exceeded their goals. So it's always be asking. Just, it's okay. It's actually feels good to give money, and it particularly feels good to give money for what you do. And we noticed that big time during COVID. COVID almost was a big advertisement for the importance of having parks and spaces and beautiful landscape for respite, for safety, for inspiration, and all those kinds of things. In terms of missteps, I've got a million of them, but I think the most important one to not do from the get-go is to form a committee and just push out and start asking when you really haven't done the due diligence and the efforts of being able to explain why this is important, why it's not like that we just want to do something, it's we have to do something, and this is how we have to do it. So I watch a lot of clients, even before I'm on the scene, form these big, fat, happy campaign committees, mostly of the wrong people, mostly of people that cannot give, most of the people who will never ask, things like that. And in order for you to blow through a campaign goal that you're trying to raise in the campaign for Hillside Park, they were trying initially to raise $4 million because that's what they were going to offer for these 20 acres to the Baltimore Country Club. They ultimately had to raise 10, which they did. It was mind-boggling how it went, but it was because they got organized. They got their communication plan in place. They got the space itself able to be visited. There's nothing like stepping foot and witnessing the space that you're talking about. And then they got organized on who they were going to ask for money, prioritizing the right number of people, the right people, and then a strategy, a personal strategy for each of those people. And that's where the success comes in. So I can't emphasize enough organizing up front before you push out and start talking about a project. You really, really need to be organized. And then I'll hand over the mic. The other misstep for a lot of clients is not to be trained properly, not to all be on the same page. When I was first asked to raise money at McDonough School, I burst into tears. I think I was 30. I was like, no, that's not what you hired me for. And I said, well, do you want to keep Patrick and Mary Jane here, with this free tuition? You're going to start asking for money. And I did. And it all worked out great. But I ended up getting some formal training. And I think, and it's not complicated. It doesn't have to be hours and hours. But just knowing the right things to say, knowing to include family members, just knowing the process is really, really important.
And I really love what you said about, just, you gotta ask, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And it's something that can be very hard for people to ask for money, but yes, you have to do it. Okay, so my next question, kind of for anyone who wants to answer it, how are you keeping operational funding, including maintenance, staffing, at the center of donor conversations when it's not flashy and it's not something, everybody wants something named after them, but so how do you keep that front and center?
So I'm running 2 capital campaigns for 2 organizations, and during both times increased annual operating at the same time as we raised additional money for campaign. And I think every time you were talking to those donors and saying, we would like you to consider a gift of $500,000 or whatever the number is to fund XYZ, that doesn't mean we want you to stop your annual commitment. Your annual gift of $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 is so important because it funds us taking care of these spaces. So we have to have that, but we would like you to make an additional gift of this other amount for this capital project. I think you have to constantly ask for both things. And it's an opportunity for you to really reinforce what you use their annual funding for. It funds all the people that you see taking care of the parks every single day. It funds the staff that you love and care for. So we need that annual funding, but we also want you to go above and beyond for this additional project. And that has proven very successful.
Sure. So I would say that, again, the fact that we do not accept government funding, we have basically made that part of our key communications, that we need our community to make gifts to keep the doors open. We're not going to get a big check from the government. And Mount Vernon belongs to America, to the citizens across the country. So the moment that people start making gifts and buying tickets, we won't exist. And so that's really a key part of our messaging, to promote unrestricted gifts. I will also tell you candidly that right now we have some major preservation projects taking place at George Washington's Mount Vernon. We are doing a once-in-a-generation holistic preservation project to save his house. We also are renovating our education center, and our education center is the key way that we teach the biography of George Washington to those who visit the estate, but it's especially designed for the young people. So we knew that in this particular year, when many rooms in the mansion would be closed, when the education center would be closed, we knew that there would be a dip in attendance. So in our annual giving messaging, we've been saying more than ever, we need you to step up to help us, keep things moving, because there will be a dip, and we budgeted for that. But I think our community understands that. And we also do a great job of showing how the unrestricted gifts have an impact across the estate. We have sent out so many video updates about the work taking place at the mansion, what's happening with the livestock, just the decorative arts, the library. So we want those who make gifts to see the impact of those dollars.
Nope, I think those guys are good.
Okay, last question. What's one thing that everyone who is currently raising money should go home and do right now?
I would say go home today and advance 5 philanthropic relationships. I know that all of you are so busy, you have so many things competing for your time, you're wearing multiple hats, but as my fellow panelists have said, if you're not asking, you're not going to receive the revenue that you need to be successful as an organization. So leave here today and just try to advance 5 relationships. And I'll give you an example. There's that top donor you've been dying to have a visit with. Send them an email or text, or, call them and say, let's get together and have lunch or coffee. There's someone in your portfolio of donors who has been a great donor and made a major gift. Maybe you haven't been in touch with that person for a while. Send them a handwritten note or a thank you email just to let them know you're thinking about them. And maybe you just met this really great prospect last week. You had a good conversation, and this person is ready for an ask. Send them a proposal. So my advice is try to advance 5 relationships for your organization.
Go home, hug your family, that should be your first thing. I mentioned that I burst into tears when I was first asked to raise money, and that was the truth. But I did learn a technique, and I go back to training. I think it's really important for those of you that are worried or fear the idea of asking for money. There are ways to do it that can really lighten it and actually make it a lot of fun. So one of the techniques that I learned early was to create what's called a gift table. In the old days, used to call it gift pyramids, but we don't use that word anymore, thank goodness. And I would consider learning how to use a gift table. And this is, I know you can't see it, but this is just a table that identifies a campaign for one of my clients right now that's going to raise $15 million. And the way to ask somebody for money is to show them the kinds of gifts it would take to get to that 15 million. How many gifts do we need in the $1 million range? What's the lead gift we need? How many do we need at 250, 100, 50, that kind of thing. And the way to do this, to use this, is if you can't get it out with words, which I couldn't in the beginning, is to just take your hand and say, would you consider a gift at this level? And I'm telling you, it works great. You watch their face, you watch what they're looking at, you see where well, I'm probably not at that number, but I'm at this number. And it's a very, very effective way if you don't have time to be getting some training and stuff, but it's to learn the very simple technique that I just said. Figure out how much it is we need to raise, what's the lead gift we need to come up with, and what other size gifts do we need to come up with it. A lot of people feel like there's this big need to go public and invite everybody in the world to participate in a campaign and a fundraising efforts. The old 90-10 rule is still around, where 10% of the people give 90% of the money. So concentrate on the top people. So go home, have fun, enjoy the rest of your weekend, but maybe on Monday or Tuesday, look at what your numbers are, put them into a gift table. If you need help, you can actually ask ChatGPT to do it for you, you can ask me to do it, anybody, but this is one of the best ways to learn the mechanics of how to ask somebody for a gift.
I did a lot of volunteer fundraising for different nonprofits before I did it professionally, and I did a training with one of the boards I was on probably 25 years ago. And it was this woman who came to our group, and she said, how do you feel when you give money away? I feel great, right? You feel really good when you're in a position to give money to a nonprofit that you care about. So why would you deny that opportunity to anyone? Was what she said. You are giving someone an opportunity to support this organization that they care about. It's not something that everybody cares about. There's a lot of going on in the world right now, and there's a lot of other pressing needs. So this is not everybody's top priority. But for those it is, it's really meaningful for them to be able to support your organization. So don't be scared to ask for money. Don't be scared to be in the room. If your development director is the one asking for money, allow space for that ask to happen and for them to respond to it. But I think it's an incredible opportunity for those leading organizations to expand the fold and bring more people into the organization and give them that opportunity to support it. In terms of takeaways and things to go back and do, all of this is relationship driven. So you can't call only when you want money. I mean, I think that's, something that people know. But when you read an article in the paper, or you see something that you think they would be interested in, whether it's related to your nonprofit, or you know that their son goes to a certain school, and this school, send them an article, I saw this, it made me think of you, just a quick little thing, just to let them know you're thinking of them. Be out and involved in the community so that you are social in the same groups where your donors are social. Whether it's kind of your downtown development organizations, your leadership programs, other nonprofits that are kind of similar, make sure and be in the same spaces so that you do have those personal relationships. And when it's time to make the ask, they're open and warm to it because you have a relationship that's not just transactional. So those are some of what I would do.
Those are such great tips. So thank you so much to this panel. I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So do we have another mic? Yeah. Okay.
I probably.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
You mentioned being organized. Have you utilized feasibility studies for your campaigns?
Yes, and I went to the dark side and became a consultant about 13 years ago. Hated hiring consultants, but yes, for those purposes. Our company calls them planning studies, and it is like a feasibility study where you reach out to people that really can make the campaign happy and successful. So the reason we call it a planning study is everybody wants to know the number, when you get out there. And I'll give you the number, I'll give it to you quickly. But I'll also tell you how to get there, and I think that's what's missing sometimes in the consulting world or in the, let's start feeling it out there on how much we think we can get, but how you're gonna get there, are your internal resources, manned up enough? Mostly, I'm guessing, you all don't have deep benches of development offices, so that's a thing, is to look at how you would take it on a campaign over and above everything you're already doing, like your operating money. So there's ways to make recommendations or offer support to do those kinds of things. But feasibility studies are a necessary evil, they work, and they are soft soliciting people that will likely be your highest donors.
Are you familiar with any online training platforms that addressed fundraising, such as One Cause?
So of how to use One Cause effectively?
Or are there anything other than One Cause, or even your opinion about One Cause? That's the only one that I'm familiar with, but that's an easy access for training, doing basic training for fundraising.
That's a great question.
In Louisville, we have Center for Nonprofit Excellence. It's a great resource. So I would look at your community and see if there's like an association of nonprofits, whatever that organization looks like. And a lot of times they may have tutorials and sessions on how to engage your board in fundraising or how to get your staff kind of up to speed for fundraising.
So maybe our local business.
Yeah, or community foundation or any kind of nonprofit alliance that you have in your community.
Where are you from? I'm from Newburgh, New York.
Okay.
So we're a little lacking, I'd like to say, in that, but at the Orange County level, perhaps.
There's usually,
Or
The
business
national
organization.
level.
that's where I was.
So there's Board Source, which is helpful, particularly for board members, but, and then blanking on, there are 2 national nonprofits dedicated to nonprofits that will have good resources on that, but I'm blanking on the names.
Association of Fundraising Professionals.
That is correct.
Yeah, it's
Association.
International Association of Fundraising Professionals, and there's lots online.
Okay, that's a good start place
That's
though.
it's also a great spot to look for people.
When we
if you're
come back
looking
to our
to hire
board and
someone.
those who are a little apprehensive, like you've
Sure.
talked about, and it's so overwhelming, we just want a starting place.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Just a quick question about building membership for friends groups and so on. Has anybody had experience with purchasing mailing lists and having success with that? Because this is something that the Friends of the Long Haul has been thinking about doing, I'm wondering if it was a waste of time. We're in the northeast of the United States, but everybody's sort of Longfellow across the country. And we're thinking about purchasing a mailing list that's national in scope, especially now in the 250th anniversary. So mailing lists.
I think your return is gonna be very small, like, 1% maybe. In some sense, that can be worth it. I would look at your last donor list first and foremost. That's the best source of new members, as you've already done that, yeah. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with it. It takes a while to build it up, but there are lots of organizations that do it, obviously, the Red Cross, United Way, lots of places are buying mailing lists. So you, again, need to have the resources to buy that, which is significant. And then you would connect it to a direct mail house, which would then be another investment. And so it just, yeah, I got you.
What other suggestions? So the other suggestion, Tom, just is that you should look at other like-minded nonprofits and look at their lists, because you don't have to decide for the donor can decide where they want to give, and usually there's enough money to go around. So definitely like a research project with different organizations. Mary, you have a question?
So for those of us who don't have a deep bench, we often have to compete against the Trust for Public Land or the Nature Conservancy, which have chapters in our state, and and they have those feasibility. They know exactly who to go after, and then they'll get money for a project that may or may not really have resonance in the neighborhoods, right? And so there's all sorts of new strategies how to, the whole idea that you get just even $1 or whatever, but how do you get beyond the fact that the establishment they've already made all those connections and work them all the time, because they've got the development staff who are working those givers, those donors, and it's really hard because there are new inventive projects that are very local, very nature in our neighborhood.
What's the question, Mary? Sorry.
So yeah, it's like, how do you get there about nature in our neighborhoods? Because it's not just a building project, because building projects do get money, and then these big organizations take this money and they do studies and go away.
We hear that conundrum all the time, so I feel for you. I think that I inhale annual reports. Any annual report I see or can get my hands on, just like what you were saying earlier, and see what causes they're giving to. And there's lots of available online information about the levels of gifts people give. I think it's important to communicate as much as possible in the area, in the neighborhood that you are working with and working in. And that's what I witnessed with Hillside Park in Baltimore. They communicated a lot, very transparent about what they needed, and asking in almost every email, who else should we be talking to? Because it doesn't mean everybody in the neighborhood is meant to give. This organization got 52 other zip codes to participate in this campaign. So it's who else should we be talking to? And that's what happens in a feasibility study, kind of what you were talking about earlier, is feeling, reaching out to people that might be connected and get you in the door of other organizations. So I think that's part of it, is just communicating, being very transparent on what you need the money for, and then looking at these annual reports. And definitely there are people that like to give to similar organizations, and trying to pick out a few of those and cultivate them.
Thank you.
Maybe one more question? One more question.
I just have a small questions. So according to many studies that I found online, I heard that women and educated people are more likely to donate and involve with charity work. So I'm curious about the demographics of the donors for this project, And do you think it should be an effective strategy to build a fundraising campaign that is more likely to target these people and involve them to this work?
I think that's a great question. For our organization, we never really track demographic data on our donors. Some of it is hard to impossible to track, but we were just too small for that to really make sense. But I do think you can figure out who you generally know who your donors are, and you can figure out what the messaging is that may appeal to them. So we had the Olmsted Parks system, so it's 17 parks. We do know that the majority of donors really use 2 of those parks. They use, the ones kind of in the wealthier part of town, but they like the idea that their money supports the work in their park and in these other parks. There was kind of a social justice component to it, that they like that we're doing work across the city. So we did member surveys every year at a certain time to kind of figure out what is the message that people really respond to. Why do you give? What are the parks you go to? What are the types of events you want to do? So we made it broad, but it did help us kind of hone in on what that message was that we thought would be compelling.
Trillions and trillions of dollars are going to be in the hands of women coming up in our future. So it's very, very important to be including women in every strategy or solicitation. It's very funny when anybody asks my husband to meet about money, I say, well, you're screwed because he doesn't make those decisions. I do. So I think it's really important to have a strategy for women. The Women's Giving Circles is one of them, but never invite somebody in for a meeting or solicitation without including their spouse. And you just can't believe that still happens. People still think of men making the decision. So just always ask the woman first to then include her husband or spouse. But trillions of dollars would be in the hands of women who will be making big decisions.
And to follow up on Eileen's point, so our current campaign will end in December of 2026, and so we are having some major gift conversations with some really prominent prospects. And something that gives me great hope for the future is that for 3 or 4 of these prospects that we're talking to about significant gifts, these donors have insisted that their children be part of the conversation. So they want their children to have a voice in what area of Mount Vernon will be supported by their gift. And they want their children to feel the joy of making a large major gift to Mount Vernon. So the generational wealth and seeing families say, I want my kids involved in this big decision, that gives me hope for the future, as you were talking about with, the wealth transfer on the horizon.
That's an excellent note to end on. Thank you so much.